Hi, everyone. I figured we would depart a little bit from hair tissue testing and health and talk a little bit about something that is not so frequently discussed. You may have heard the word ether or Akasha, the Akashic Records, the Hall of Akashic Records. I mean, some of these might start to feel like they cue a little bit of a memory inside of you that you've heard them before, and maybe you're actually even quite familiar with them. I don't know. But as a young girl, I was raised to understand what Akasha and the ether and the ancestors were all about. I was not raised in a religious home. A lot of people use the word pagan as if it is a negative word, and it's actually a word for reverence for nature, the ancestors, and the original life long before we had religion, which is an organized system of how we present reverence to nature and those who came before us, which we call the ancestors. Let's get into it. When I talk about the ether, I remember being even in my 20s and speaking with people while I was at some of my first jobs, because I felt like I was always kind of the odd duck in a lot of ways because of being raised so differently. And people would ask me, are you a witch? Are you a pagan? Are you a this? And I said, no, I'm not any of those things. I'm just someone who's very, very devoutly connected with nature. And God, for me, is outside in nature. My grandmother was reading the book When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stone in 1976. And I witnessed her reading the Bible cover to cover on more than one occasion, meaning cover to cover on more than one occasion. I'm quite sure that she's read the Bible well over one full time. She's passed on now in the year 2010. It's 2020 as we speak. And now I find myself stepping into the path of the elder wise guide, the elder shaman, the medicine woman. Not all shamans are medicine people. Some are not. Depends if you put in the time, you put the hands and the heart on with the people, as I did. But ether really is about tuning into the frequency of the earth in its natural state. Now, because I've been alive since 1961, I'm also acutely aware of the fact that technology has changed and morphed nature and its natural grid. Even if you say, but wait a minute, you talk a lot about the matrix, you talk a lot about the unnatural grid, and now you're talking a lot about fifth generation and technology's new grid. And you often speak about it as a behavioral grid, and those are true. That's absolutely correct. I definitely do. Okay. So the grid that we live under, nature or the matrix grid, either one of those has a horizontal and a longitudinal, right? So when you look at a map, you look at the coordinates that are longitudinal as well as horizontal, and you figure out the coordinates as to where you wanted to go. Before you had Google Maps on your phone, you needed to figure this out. So if we were taking a road trip to Yellowstone Park, for example, we would get out our paper map and figure out exactly where we were going to go based on the coordinates, based on the grid of the earth that could be found on any paper map. And so people had these paper maps that we folded up neatly, and everybody knew how to fold up their paper map, kind of a thing. Ether is, for most intents and purposes, the longitudinal lines. So when I was sitting in my front yard, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, I don't even remember the year. I wish I did with specificity. But I looked up and actually saw the matrix, right? I saw this overlay onto what is our nature. Naturally, we would tune into this energetic soup that is known as ether. This is why in my 20s I said I'm a really very etheric being, which means that instead of constantly looking with my eyes and making logical assumptions for everything, I made observations based on seeing in real time and not just seeing in straight logic, linear time. I'm going to do the best that I possibly can using words to describe something that's very, very difficult, whether it was Einstein talking about and sort of discounting the original ways that we looked at ether and coming up with a more relativistic ether, or whatever it is. It is a difficult subject to talk about and use, linear words to describe it. As a young child who hasn't gone into early fours and preschools and all those kinds of, mind conditioning, that child is living very, very strongly inside of an etheric soup. By the time that child reaches the age of 5, which is a socially developmental time, developmental psychology, that a child is going to reach the age of fear. That's where we start to realize that from the age of 3, when we start to separate and our bowels are doing different things than mom's bowels, we don't have our urination and our bowel movements and stuff at the same time. We start to become separate etherically, meaning there's a cord that comes between mom and child until the child's a toddler, that is an invisible connective cord, so that child can vibes mom, whether they're 2,000 miles away or the child's been adopted or whatever it is. That child is still sensing mother because of the time spent in the womb and the blood connection and the energy connection to mother. So that's another great way for me to share with you about what ether is and what etheric is. Okay. So the further and the further that we distance ourselves into the land of logic, linear land, there's a bottom line. What's the bottom line number? You got to make money to pay for this thing, and all of that, yada yada. You start to become a logical, predictable soldier on the field as you absorb the use of more and more technology. You tune in to more television. You eat more food, drugs, because you can choose what you want to eat. You drink less water, and on and on and on and on. You start to become much more of a predictable, static, stagnant being on the field as you age. And so this is why what we see with a lot of our elders and ancients is that they have forgotten, and they have come into just being reliant upon religion and industry and pharma and vaccine and food, drugs, and they just give up and they just go with the flow because that's the way that they're being pushed gently, gently down the stream until their lives are ended. Okay. I always wish that that wouldn't be the case for me. And I'm quite sure that if my son were alive, he would make sure that that wouldn't be the case for me. But that's another part and parcel to the problem of removing our multiple generations and 400,000 of our children being lost to the opioid crisis. So ether is an energetic soup that we swim in. You can't touch it. It's not tangible. You can't taste it, but it's there. When you go out into a nice, beautiful trail that's thickly forested with flowers and green plants that are respirating on a nice, humid day that's warm and the sunshine is out and it's producing all of this photosynthesis, it's almost like you feel as if you're in a thick, lush garden of ether. And it is during that time that you will feel the presence of the ancestors even more so, because the Vedic word for this is Akasha. And so the Hall of Akashic Records is the ancestral records, which again are not in books. They are not tangible, but they are accessible. if you're able to tune in and maintain that childlike state, that state of wonder, that state of pause from only surviving. Surviving is different than thriving. So keeping you in a state of suppression and fear, and we'll use the word downpression. We know depression. Downpressed keeps you as far away as possible from ether and accessing the Akashic records. If you cannot accept that you are a spirit being in a water bag vehicle, housing your spirit and your energy, needing to cooperate and live and function with the whole of your world family, your brothers and sisters. If you cannot conceive of this and you do not feel comfortable making this happen, what ends up happening is you end up experiencing a lot of disconnection type diseases, right? So you might call them autoimmune or cancer. Can I, sir? Like patriarchy. Can I, sir? Cancer. Can I get permission to just run my own life and be an adult, right? Connecting with the ether is what you saw the shaman, elder shaman woman do on the movie Avatar. You saw her using waves, okay? Waves. And showing her interacting with the waves. But what about today when people make glittering conclusions too rapidly? They make the assumption that, oh, is she practicing witchcraft over there? She doing some kind of hoodoo voodoo? She doing some kind of stuff that you shouldn't be doing, working with the dark arts and doing some kind of thing, working with Satan? And to that, I'm going to say pedophilia, eating human body parts, human trafficking, some of the drugs that we're pushing on people and packing up into people as drug mules, and all of the variety of things. I think that would really qualify for being something quite evil, juxtapose what I'm talking about, which is setting up a holistic environment for our people, making sure that we have food forest and that the waters are clean enough for us to scoop and drink from the water once again. Because it should not be the case that we all need to have water filtration in our homes, constantly adding water to it and filtering the water through these candles and cones and filtration systems that cost money, take time, and only give us a limited amount of water, while other people are running to the store and getting endocrine disrupting thin plastic bottles wrapped in tons of plastic and hauling them home in their vehicles because they really don't understand that that's essentially toilet water put in a very thin plastic bottle that ruins their endocrine system, their hormone system. It leaches estrogen into that water because of the plastic, and the plastic contains BPA, bisphenol A, which is a hormone mimicking chemical. So as that water sits in those trucks that are being trucked across the country and then brought into Walgreens and Walmart and Kmart and all these different kinds of big box stores, they're absorbing, the water is sitting in those little thin crunchy bottles, and by the time you get a hold of it, that water has absorbed all of that bisphenol A plastic, which is also in the mouths of a great many people who had dentistry work done and thought they were getting composite fillings, the white fillings. They were made with BPA. So as you're chewing your food, you're releasing an endocrine disrupting chemical. It's reducing your hormonal system, okay? So how are we to connect with the ancestors? And that is through connecting and tuning in with the nature grid. And that becomes more and more difficult as we navigate an artificial, technologically driven grid that is as strong as it is 60 gigahertz. 60 gigahertz with fifth generation is something that causes an enormous amount of biologic stress on the body, including the body's respiration, including the body's blood system, the body's heart. The body's electrical system includes the heart and the brain, the central nervous system. So as we partake of these chemicals on a daily basis and they start to accrue and aggregate in the body, and they create blood aggregations and hypoxia and oxygen deprivation, they create pain in the body. That pain is then mitigated, it's addressed by giving people a glut of drugs, which is why the majority of my clients come in with 14 to 28 medications. And if you say that you do medicine or you're a medicine woman, they are absolutely clueless about what that is, which means that it takes a little while to sit down and listen to the story and read the wellness form and figure out exactly how the person got into the situation that they're in vis-a-vis their ancestors. So if your mother is thyroid deficient and your grandmother is thyroid deficient, and they were also eating food chemicals, and they were also living on land that was full of toxic or heavy metals, it's continued on and on and on throughout multiple generations. And now the people have become much more left brain hemispheric dominant, and they're going to be much less likely to be creative, artistic, want to live a very creative, expressive life, including connecting with their ancestors. They're going to be much more drawn to straight, linear industry. Religion is going to appeal to them much more than spirituality. So if we had left brain religion, we'd have right brain spirituality. Left brain, we've got someone who goes and gets a job as a nurse. Right brain, we've got someone who becomes a shaman and a medicine woman. One person over here on the right-hand side wants to find out what really happened to that person to create the situation that they're in on a shaman, as a shaman and a medicine woman. The nurse wants to take the vitals and note the chart and figure out what the protocol is through the system of the way the doctors were trained through the American Medical Association. And let's just get to the crux of the problem. Let's get it and get it done with and get them out the door and get a medication. Or let's do a surgery and get it cut out. Let's do a chemical therapy and let's kill the damn thing. Let's conquer it, kill it, destroy it, battle it, get rid of it. Okay, kill the cancer. The medicine person over here says, how did they get cancer in the first place? Where were they living? What was going on with their parents? What's going on with their hair tissue testing? What's going on with what they're eating? What are their habits? Are they smoking cigarettes? Are they drinking coffee? What is going on a daily basis that we can start to adjust? So instead of just killing the thing out of them, we can connect on a much more etheric level, the energy soup, the longitudinal waves that are a part of this field. We live in a energetic field. And that's why television's broadcast and radio's broadcast, and the sun gives us radiant energy. And Wi-Fi travels through the airwaves on electromagnetic waves, which is what the earth is made out of, right? So connecting with your ancestors is not something that's difficult to do, unless, of course, you bypassed all those phases and quickly went on to religious schools and logical thinking and eating like the rest of your family and going into very rote, R-O-T-E, habitual ways of being. But it's never too late to turn that around. Fortunately, the body is very thankful when you turn it around and start to feed it well and remove some of the habits that place a burden on it. And then next thing you know, you're connecting once again to the nature grid and a little less to the technological grid, which wants to overpower everything. Okay? So, a really big difference between ether and Wi-Fi or the web, okay? Or fifth generation. So, ether is very different, okay, than any of that. And it's very, very important because if you plan to help people and be a guide, be one of the council of elders, and to help to change a lot of what you see happening today on Earth, to be a contributor, that means that you need to be able to tune in to being comfortable in a quiet place a large part of your day. You don't just fill up your day with superfluous talking that doesn't really have any significance, or sitting down and watching soap operas, or being at the casino and pulling the levers, going to the buffet and gluttonously just eating and eating and eating and eating at the buffet because, well, it's free and I want to get my money's worth. It means that you're living your life in a way that it matters, that you are putting a concerted effort into your way of life. A lot of times you call that your lifestyle, right? So getting in touch and in tune with the energetic soup of life, which is the ether, connecting with the ancestors, because you either believe that, well, they're just totally gone, or they're just totally up in heaven and there's no access whatsoever, or you believe that you can take insights from them in subtle ways. Sometimes you see a special kind of a bird that, was very significant with that person. Could be crow, it could be raven, it could be eagle, it could be dolphins where you are, or manatee, it could be buffalo, it could be, and you're down close to the Four Corners area of the United States and close to Yellowstone, where I took my son several times. It could be that, you're someone who's very earth element, or you're very water, very air, very fire element. And then the fifth sacred thing, which is Akasha, which is this beautiful etheric soup, which connects us with the ancestors. So that's what I wanted to share today, is a little bit about ether, the ancestors, Akasha, why it's important. And I also want to be a hand to hold on to during this time. Hopefully this is something that can help you and give you insights. You can keep some, you can toss the ones that don't seem to mesh with you. And maybe you're a person that's extremely devoutly religious right now, and hey, that's where you are, okay? You might not be there forever for the rest of your life. You might decide to shift from that a little bit. You might decide to stay there. Totally up to you. I'm not here to condemn or convert. I'm here to share. And I want to be able to share with you things that have been meaningful on my path, and things that I have felt that now I can kind of condense and put into a way that are bite-sized pieces that other people can get something from. So if you have any questions or comments, note them down below. If you wouldn't mind, please subscribe and share videos, because once we can get to certain numbers, we can do a lot more. And I'd like to be able to live stream outside of the house in other situations as well, too. So thank you for joining me, and have a wonderful day. I hope this has been meaningful for you.